Call the meeting to order at 5 p.m. We all stand for the flag, please.
One nation.
Roll call. Let the record reflect that all members of the governing board and administrators are present. Oh, I'm sorry, except for Irene, Ms. Castaneda. Approval of agenda. It's recommended that the governing board approve the agenda of the February 15th, 2022 governing board meeting. Get a motion.
A motion.
Thank you, Ms. Shedd.
I'll second.
Thank you, Ms. Ahmad. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, and I'm an aye. Motion passes 4-0. Approval of minutes, the January 24th, 2022 regular meeting minutes. Do I have a motion?
I'll motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chong.
A second.
Thank you, Ms. Shedd. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, and I'm an aye. Motion passes 4-0. Hearing session. The audience members may request to address the board on an item on or off the agenda per Board Bylaw 9323. Individual speakers shall be allowed 3 minutes to address the governing board on each agenda or non-agenda item. The board limits the total time for public input on each item to 20 minutes. Total time allowed for public comment shall be 30 minutes. Audience members wishing to address the board during the hearing session of the agenda should fill out a request to address the governing board form and turn it into the executive assistant prior to the board holding the hearing session. Dr. Miramontes.
President Fructose, we have no public comments.
Okay, thank you. We're moving on to board comments. Start with Mr. Chong.
Thank you. Just want to throw a couple of shout outs. I heard we had the OCQ Tech Fest at the middle school, Buena Park Middle School. Anytime you get to host something like that, just get your name out there, showing the great things we do. So shout out to Ms. Benda and Mr. Osborne. I heard they were instrumental in bringing that to our district, and as well as Ms. Walsh and Ms. Lee presenting at this. So I commend everyone for doing that, and just technology is always ongoing, always changing, and to put us out there to not to be afraid of technology. It's a great thing to show. So I appreciate everyone that did that. Another shout out to Mr. Beckelheimer and Ms. Centeno and the service team to help putting on the spelling bee. I would love to have seen, the students asking like root of origin, and could you please say that in another sentence? And I didn't get to see that because, we're trying to be safe, but they did a great job. And I heard Whitaker School did a really good job representing that day. So shout out to Whitaker School and just all those who put that together. As hopefully the pandemic's kind of winding down, just hoping that we get to, like we have here today, Emory School, and a lot of people representing them, to have more options to be able to showcase what we do and people to be back in person somehow. So it's really good to see that. I know it was limited to see the people at the spelling bee, but still the excitement just when you're live is just so different. So hopefully we can get to that point. Everyone's putting a lot of effort in, so I appreciate that effort. Just continue to urge you all to fight the good fight and be safe, of course, and that hopefully we get to have a good school start next year. Other than that, I just want to say that, and I'm really excited about the report today because I know there's amazing things going on at Emory, and just love to hear more about that. So that's my report today.
Thank you, Mr. Chong. Ms. Ahmad.
Thank you. I'm also looking forward to today's presentation. Emory has always had a special place in my heart for certain reasons, but I really appreciate every single school report we get to see, especially with actual real life people that we have for the past 2 times. We kind of have been talking to ourselves for the past 2 years, so it's nice to see real people. Really excited about all the things happening at our district. I mean, a lot of things that are kind of going back to normal. We're seeing art shows, spelling bees, science camp, and, school presentations like this. So as long as, we're able to do as much as we can for kids in our districts, it definitely makes everything worth it. I'd like to take the opportunity to also congratulate all the teachers of the year for this year, and especially Mrs. Danielle Fuson from Whitaker School for being our OC Teacher of the Year nominee. It's always great to see what wonderful things our teachers are doing. I'd also like to congratulate our classified employees of the year and just tell them how much we appreciate them for everything they do, for transportation, maintenance, food and nutrition services, just everything. Last week was National Counselors Appreciation Week. Thank you to all our wonderful counselors for helping us navigate, these tough times with our students. And without them, I mean, these past 2 years would have looked much different. And I'd also like to end with just wishing Alfonso Perez, I know he started his retirement. I want to thank him for all his years of service and just appreciate everything he's done for our district. That's it for me.
Thank you. I too was so, I had so much fun at the spelling bee. And Mr. Beckenhammer made it so much, so it was entertaining. It kept the kids involved and the parents that were able to come and see what was going on. And at the January 26th Orange County School Board Association, we had a presentation of the budget of the governor's budget. And as everybody knows by now that there's more money for education proposed this year. I was especially glad to see that there's more money proposed for special ed because they frequently get left out. And so that was a good thing because well, we need it. What can I say? And the outdoor science camp, well, not today, as someone said, that there's so many things that we're getting back to doing again. And it is a joy to see all that's going on in our district. And that is it for me.
Thank you, Shed. Everybody always does a great job sharing their stories about what we've done throughout the few weeks. So it kind of minimizes mine a little bit, which is nice. But also I want to congratulate Mrs. Lori Cannon once more. I was a part of her CSA President Chapter 569 installation of officers. So I participated in that. So I want to congratulate her once more. Also want to thank Ms. Benda, our tech team, for hosting OCQ. It was well represented. We had over 150 attendees, and everybody was raving about what great classes we have in our campus, how great it looks. So I was kind of flying under the radar a little bit, so it was kind of nice to hear all that. So thank you for hosting that. Also, our custodians, they were out here over the weekend as well, helping with that and cleaning up. So thank you for that. And also had the opportunity to stop by Gilbert and see them reenact the Revolutionary War. That was really cool. It was really animated. All the students were great actresses and actors, so they were having a great time. So that was really neat to see. I'm also looking forward to this Saturday. I do have a Professional Development Board President Day, so I look forward to that and learning more about my current role. And lastly, I do look forward to tonight's presentation. It's a well-looking crowd here. It's good to see a crowd back in here, actually. Made me a little nervous because we were so used to having no audience. But it's good to see everybody here, and I look forward to that. And that concludes my report. Dr. Montasser.
Thank you, board members. I'm looking off my things and seeing what I can check off, right? Because you've said a lot. But I will start with the update on the mask requirements. In an effort to provide ongoing communication, we'd like to provide an update for you. Some changes. Once again, school districts are faced with complying with the mask mandates, and they change often, right? But as of February 15th, indoor public spaces, masks are expired. However, for K-12 settings in our schools, face coverings will remain as a state requirement for students and staff members while they are indoors at all school sites. Furthermore, the California Department of Ed, the California Department of Public Health will be updating us on February 28th. I had a meeting last Friday. I was in Tulsa on Friday, and I had an emergency meeting yesterday with our superintendents from Orange County. We all are working together with the state to work through the differences that people may have, but just so everybody knows, the mask mandate for school sites remains in effect until further notice. With that being said, I want to give a big thank you to our ed services staff and our middle school sites that got our middle school students off onto a bus up the mountain to Pali Institute I also want to thank our Board of Education. It's a commitment they made when they first came in for 3 years, and we've been able to fund it for 3 years. And I'm assuming that, I shouldn't assume, but I'm assuming that we probably need to put that on the action item if we want to continue this. But I have heard nothing but great things from our students coming back. I also had the opportunity to visit the Orange County Q Fest. Christina Walsh and Alice Lee did present. There's some great things about that, but it was exciting to host and have other districts from Irvine and Campbell Valley and Saddleback and Centralia, next door neighbors, all come to learn from each other. And I want to thank Andy Osborne and Natalie Benda, who were coordinating a lot of the events there. So thank you to them. Spelling Bee finalists, of course, always a wonderful event. Employee of the Year recognition. It's going to go through all the names. A memo did go out today, congratulating all the staff members. Congratulations to Danielle Fuson. Congratulations to Vanessa Flores from Food and Nutritional Services. Christina Jarvis for Paraprofessional. These are classified employees of the year. Daniela Pineda from Health and Student Services. Juan Chavez for Custodial Maintenance Services. And Chung Kong for Transportation. We couldn't do it without the many district employees that every day work as hard as they can for our students and our staff members. And then lastly, just a quick plug-in for the 10 educational commandments for families hosted by our Ed Services team. This starts tomorrow. The board has a packet there in your packet. This has gone out. It's a virtual conference for parents, well attended. Thank you, Mrs. Centeno and the Ed Services team on the leadership of Dr. Cantu for providing these. I think these have been wonderful opportunities for parents to grow and to receive some of that SEL that we need as we move forward together. And then lastly, I just want to welcome the Emory audience today. You know, as the board members mentioned, it's nice to have people in the audience. So thank you for being here tonight. Tonight we celebrate Emory School and your students, our children. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Miramontes. We want to program and reports. Charles G. Emory School Report. Dr. Miramontes.
Yes, I'd like to turn this over to Chief Academic Officer, Dr. Cantu, who will introduce the school and the presenter.
Board President, board members, Dr. Miramontes, Superintendent, Cabinet. As you know, Emory School has earned a reputation for having rigorous instructional programs and always evidenced with their STEAM activities, their games and bathroom. They cleaned up at the city Whitaker Park Art Show. And also they have strong teacher collaboration as evidenced in their movement to create and help PLC, as well as their COSIP Foundation participation. And when you go on that campus,
go on a campus, it is clearly one of positive climate. If it's a spirit day, you don't just see a few, you see all participating. So it's with great pleasure and pride that we present our report from Emory School.
Good evening, everyone, governing board, cabinet, other district staff, and of course, the wonderful Emory School community, parents, students, as well as our staff that are here this evening. It's always a pleasure for me to speak about the fantastic things that are happening at Emory School. This year, our theme is whatever it takes, Avengers style. Our superpowers are in the people, including our staff, our students, and our families. In a year where we return to full-time in-person learning, we knew there would be challenges and therefore committed to doing whatever it takes for our young scholars. This includes, but is not limited to, our, next slide, our data-driven decision-making, continuing professional development for staff, strengthening our professional learning community, and providing necessary supports and intervention. So here you can see this is one of our spirit days that Dr. Cantu was talking about. At the very beginning of the year, we kicked it off with superheroes to go along with our theme. And you can even see our young TK students right at the beginning of the year, already looking like wonderful scholars. Next slide. So this journey began with utilizing the iReady diagnostic as a universal screener to determine where our students were at, what they already knew, and what they still needed support with. In comparing these scores to the most recent assessment, we found an increase in the number of students performing at or above grade level in reading, and a decrease in the students that were 2 or more years below. You can see the comparison nicely on the bar at the bottom to see that the green is expanding. So that's what we want to see. Next slide. The same holds true for our math scores. Again, you can see there's an increase in the green area, which is for students that are at grade level or above grade level. And then we see a decrease in students in the red area, which is 2 or more years below. And we go from the bottom bar, which is in August, to the bar above. So we're really pleased with our scores, and this is all attributed to the hard work of our teachers, as well as our students and their families and their commitment to their education. Next slide. We also utilize our Panorama Screener, which is for social emotional skills. And it's very similar to what we saw last year with our scores on Panorama. Our students feel strongly about having supportive relationships in their life. One area that we are looking at and we continue to monitor is there's some students that struggle with emotional regulation, which we support in our daily SEL lessons, and as well as our counselor on campus. Next slide. So to continue our professional development this year, the teachers participated in the cognitively guided instruction CGI professional development. We continue to work on reading and writing workshop through our collaboration time. We have our teachers being trained on English language development, which we bring back to the staff during staff meetings. And again, like I mentioned before, expanding our professional learning communities. We also have our coats and mentor and fellows that work closely together. And we just had a nice lunch that was sponsored by Coatson, and the teachers enjoyed that last week. Next slide. So looking at our professional learning community, we are a professional learning community, and we've looked a few times at the stages of collaboration. And with that, we have a shift in our focus on teaching to a focus on learning. So we're looking at our structured collaboration time on Thursdays and how to support that work by utilizing that time to look at student work. And I just kind of added a little cycle here that teachers work through. It looks different every week because it depends on what they're working on at that time. But you begin with your planning, and then you go on to teach the lessons. You reflect and look at student work and analyze the data. And then you go back and intervene and then go through the cycle each time. So as far as strengthening that professional learning community, it's an ongoing process. Next slide. In addition to teaching and learning, we always love to celebrate students and provide fun opportunities as well. So we have our PBIS team. We have a wonderful team that is always looking for ways to help support our students and make learning fun and provide them with those rewards. So here you can see on the upper right-hand corner at the beginning of the year, we teach our expectations through our rotations, and there's our health clerk teaching about the office and using the health office. And we also have one of our spirit days there as well that is sponsored by our PBIS team. Classrooms can earn Charlie that comes into their room, and they have it for a month until our next spirit day. And then we also had our barbecue. You can see Charlie is there, AKA Miss Ferrara. Charlie is there greeting the students and enjoying that time with them. It was a great event, and the students, many of them were saying that was the best day ever. So if I only knew we ought to just give them a hamburger and they would be happy, then we would have done it a long time ago. So we enjoy that, and we love to make school fun and exciting for our kids, and our team is dedicated to that. We also do our spin and win activities. Students can enter into that and win prizes. We were doing that last year as well. Next slide. And of course, to continue that recognition of our students and their wonderful work, we have our Trimester Awards. Although they were on Zoom last year, we were able to do them in person with our students and staff, but we did Zoom the parents in so they could watch as well. And at these awards, we honor students in each classroom for showing great work and following our 3 R's, being respectful, responsible, ready to learn, and safe, as well as honor roll for students in grades 4 and 5. Next slide. And to address our new initiative this year, well, new to some staff, kindergarten started last year and first grade. So we have our cognitively guided instruction. It's a little bit hard to see this picture, but I know in talking with our second grade team, this student was able to look at a picture of oranges and slices of oranges, and he was able to determine that there were fractions in there, the way the slices were broken down. So one of the teachers shared that photo with me, and it just goes to show that through this work, our students are really building their skills and their math thinking. Our teachers participated in that professional development. We also had a lesson study with MIT, as well as working in the summer. And then we also have our school-wide counting collections. So our Coats and mentor, Mrs. Bashadi, who's learning a lot about this as well, she put together counting collections for teachers to check out and help them support that work. And then it's just continuous learning. It's really interesting to be in classrooms. I was observing a lesson just last week, and it was great to see the students and their thinking and really challenging them through word problems and extending that. Next slide. And of course, our passion program is STEAM. So through distance learning, STEAM was a little bit challenging, but we wanted to get back on track with that. And teachers are utilizing classroom time to work through some of these things. But here you can see one of the teachers started going back into our STEAM lab using our Dash robots, and the kids love using those, gets them really thinking, as well as doing our STEAM days. Our STEAM days are grade level driven now, so teachers get together and decide when they're going to do those about once a trimester. And it really gives an opportunity for students to participate in all aspects of STEAM throughout that time, and just enjoying that hands-on learning. Next slide. And to extend that as well, we know our community has an interest in the arts, and we know the importance of that in school. So we had our first school art contest at the beginning of the year, and the pieces now decorate our cafeteria. There's a picture there at the bottom left. And our school site council supports this as well and provided funds to work with Segerstrom again this year. Thankfully, we're starting those in person. Last year we did them on Zoom. And so in the upper right-hand corner, you can see some of our 5th graders starting their hip hop dance lessons that they really enjoyed. So each classroom will have 6 lessons, and each student gets to participate in that as well. Next slide. In regards to our GATE program, as you know, we have our 3 self-contained GATE classes that provide differentiated instruction for the students throughout the day. We also have our math team. Unfortunately, there will not be a county tournament again this year, but we did have our students participate in the Math Olympiad. That's still ongoing. And they're beginning to get ready for Battle of the Books. And we recently had an innovation challenge. Some of it's still happening right now. I got to see in Mr. Little's class the other day, students brought in their projects, and they were really excited about timing there, it was a challenge where they had to build a structure and take a ping pong ball and see how long it could go through the structure. And there's a whole formula for it. They were really excited. But what was neat to see was when it didn't work, they were trying to figure out how to make it work and improve their time. We also brought in an instructor to do some chess lessons with the kids, and they got really excited and interested in chess. Next slide. And of course, this year we have our different physical education program with our wonderful coach, Kim. He is fantastic. The students really enjoy working with him and doing the PE classes every day, as well as our Playworks. We have Coach Kate that comes out every other month and does lessons with the students and their teachers. And what we've really seen is that students are participating in different activities during their free playtime at recess because they're learning these activities through Playworks. And we also have our junior coaches that are out to support our primary students during recess. Next slide. And even though we can't have parents on campus, we do still have parents involved in our school. We have been able to have Eagles activities as far as like our trunk or treat. We also had a very, very successful membership drive this year. And Eagles rewarded our students with a BMX bike show. So that was fun. And we have our school site council and ELAC. So we're looking forward to, hopefully, as numbers continue to go down, to get our parent volunteers back at Emory School. Next slide, and that's it. Any questions?
I have one question. You mentioned the Playworks junior coaches.
Uh-huh.
Who are they?
So we have 4th and 5th grade students that are junior coaches. They volunteered to sign up. Coach Kate trains them along with our counselor, Mrs. James. And they train every other month, and then they're out at the primary recess.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
No question. Just thank you so much for all the amazing things that are happening at Emory. I feel like it's such a huge relief to have your kids want to come into school, and it's all because of all the hard work that all the staff is putting in there. So thank you.
Thank you. Yes. The teachers work very, very hard, and they put in a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. And I appreciate them and all the work that our staff does. And there's not any time that's wasted around our campus. And now I know we are going to recognize our students for their wonderful achievements this year. I want to say that these students were recognized by their teachers, and these students were chosen out of their entire grade level. So boys and girls, you should be very proud of yourself. We are very proud of you because that's a very challenging thing to earn, and you did a great job. So looking at all of our core ethical values, we know that you have all those aspects. And so as I call your name, I'm going to tell you what your teacher said about you. And we'll have them come up. We're going to start with 5th grade because they've kind of done these things before. They're not quite as shy as the little ones, so they're going to show us the way, all right? Our first student, Herman Borrell, his teacher said he is a well-rounded individual with a kind heart, who always thinks of others first, has a positive attitude, and respects himself and others. Juliet Ayak, come on up. Juliet is a wonderful student who encompasses all core ethical values. She's a great leader and a role model to her fellow students. Congratulations. Our next student couldn't be here with us tonight, but her mom is here, and that is Sophia Reyes. Sophia teacher said she is conscientious, hardworking student who has a strong sense of responsibility and always strives to do her best. Congratulations to Sophia. Our next student, Jacob Lee. Jacob's teacher said, "I'm so proud of Jacob for exhibiting the Buena Park School District's core ethical values on a consistent basis." Great job, Jacob. And first grade, Hannah Montasser. Hannah is a wonderful role model, organizer, and leader in her class. She is able to bring her peers together with group projects so that all have a voice to get the job done. She always goes above and beyond in all she does. Great job. They're on their way. Okay, our next student, kindergartner, they're on their way, but we'll talk about him anyway. Elias Neshawa. Elias demonstrates all of the district's core ethical values, but the one that stands out the most to his teacher is respect. He is always respectful to his classmates and teacher. He is also very well behaved, which is a big part of being respectful. Our next student is Emily On. Emily is a dedicated TK scholar who goes above and beyond in her efforts to be a fluent reader and wonderful storyteller. Congratulations.
Parents, you're welcome to stand right out front here, take pictures. We'll get the board up here, and then after we'll just get the people. Thank you, Mrs. Lennicky. Thank you, students. Parents, this is a great time. If you'd like, you're welcome to stay, or a great time to take the students home or your children home. Like that.
Thank you, everyone.
Your sister Ramon is the one that plays tennis.
Oh, yes, yes, yes.
I think she got the same award when she was.
No, they're fine. Not yet.
All right, thanks, everyone. Moving on to facilities and modernization report, Dr. Miramontes.
Yes, I've got Tim Spencer from Teleq, our partners, Mike Anderson, our Director of Facilities Maintenance Operations and Acquisition, and Mike Magbu, our Chief Technology Officer. I do want to give them and commend them for the posters that you see around the room behind Mr. Chong there. You've got all the playgrounds that will be updated along with the padding, the new padding. And then we also talked about shade structures over the playgrounds. And that was a big thing that the board had asked for. In front of the dais here, we have all the solar projects that are going in to provide green energy for our district and for the students here. Behind me is Pendleton School Student Administration Building, and also the Whitaker Street, or I should say Whitaker frontage area. And then at the very back, you'll see the nice pallets of all our multi-purpose rooms that are going to be upgraded this summer at the elementary school sites. I'll turn it over to Mr. Telek, Mr. Telek.
He is
From
the
Telek.
Mr. Telek, yeah.
I don't want that title. Am I good here? Or should I move over to the side where, like I was looking at people's backs of their heads, so.
Yeah, you're okay.
All right. Well, good evening. It's been a few months since I've spoken to most of you,
We
and
asked
it's
about you.
exciting to be here. So we thought we'll do things a little different this time around with some printouts and some nice visuals rather than little squares on PDFs for you guys to look at what are projects that we're moving forward with this summer. So as I'm going through my presentation, I'll kind of point where we're at and the projects that I'm talking about throughout the space of the room. So let's go to the next slide and get started here with our agenda. Is really talk about our current project of the baby athletic building that's currently under construction, and then just talk about all the upcoming projects that we have going on, because we do have a lot that's taking place this summer. And later on in the agenda, we have some items that are for the board approval for permission to bid. That way we can get the ball rolling on a lot of these jobs that are taking place in the summer. As we all know, right now, there's a lot of constraints in the construction industry, just with material procurements and getting materials on time. So we like to get ahead of that by bidding out these projects early. That way we can mitigate those potential issues. So that's why a lot of these things are on the board agenda so early in the year, is we're just trying to do everything we can to mitigate potential issues. So moving on to the next slide, our first project is the baby locker building. And over by the California flag, there is a picture of what our locker building is going to be with the big clear story high windows. Yeah, that's very intentional. We want the light, as much daylight as possible, but being a locker building, we want those windows high, away from any visual or outside looking in. So you'll see there that current project is under construction. We completed all the import and recompaction of the soils that are needed to build the foundation. We did come across some asbestos piping underground for the campus irrigation that has been removed and rerouted. That was done about 2 weeks ago. We expected to have the certified building pad by tomorrow. That was actually done today. So as of today, we do have a certified pad, which is a big milestone for construction, which allows us to then go through and put the footings and build the building and start going vertical. So you'll see that here shortly. A lot of construction takes place underground. A lot of time takes place getting utilities and all those things in place. So now that we have the certified pad, we'll be rocking and rolling on some foundation work and start going up. So that project is expected to be completed in the middle of July. Currently, right now, we have about a 3-week delay due to this asbestos pipe, getting the contractor started off the bat, and then some of the underground utility work that took longer than the original schedule. We're working to move that schedule up, but worst case scenario will still be done in the middle of the summer before school starts. So that has always been the goal, to complete this project before the school year begins. So that project does have a budget of hard and soft costs all in of about $6.4 million. And to date, we have not spent any of our contingencies of the $300,000. And I know, like, kind of contrary to what I earlier said about the asbestos piping, we're waiting for that cost, the final cost, to come in until we expend that contingency amount. Now that we just completed that, we'll have that in our next monthly update for the contingency use, but it wasn't that much work. Yeah, I'll have an update on that numbers, but it's very minimal in comparison to the amount of contingencies that we have in the job. The next slide is our next project, which is the playgrounds. And right behind, on my right behind Sandy, you'll see some drawing renderings of vertical looking down plan view of the playgrounds at each site. And we can go into these details if you guys have any specific questions about what apparatuses are on there, but we're really doing a like for like, and we're utilizing the existing poles and structures at most of the site to add new apparatuses on the play area. And then part of that also includes the new grass that will be below the play area as well. And you can't see the grass on the rendering, but just like the mock-up that we did at the Emory School, will be used at every single site. So some logistics, like I mentioned earlier, with procuring material, Miracle, who is the manufacturer of the play equipment, they are rolling out our schools, one school at a time. We originally looked at placing one large order to get all the material at one time, but Miracle did say that we wouldn't get get all the material until about end of August. So what we did is we broke it up by site to get each site delivered in increments throughout throughout the course of the construction, with Emory being the first send in the deferred submittal, and then order that material. So we're rushing to get this approved. That way our deferred submittal can go to DSA and installed during the summer portion of work. And that project does have a budget of $2.1 million for all 4 of the sites.
Let me, just let me clarify.
Yeah, no
that.
problem.
It's Emory and Corey that have already gone through approval, and we're waiting for Gilbert and Whitaker to go through.
Correct. Sorry, I do have a typo there. You're right. Thank you, Mr.
I think you guys
Montes.
caught that.
Yeah.
But I want to make sure it was very clear.
Yeah, it's Gilbert and Whitaker that we expect to receive by the end of this month.
Okay.
Thank you. The next project is what we're calling the Whitaker curb appeal, which is actually more of a parking lot reconfiguration and correction to some of the congestion issues with drop off and pickup. And right behind Dr. Miramontes, you'll see a rendering of what that parking lot reconfiguration is going to look like to maximize the space that we have and to get as many cars as possible into the parking lot during drop off and pickup, along with doing some landscape upgrades to make the curb appeal of the school look a lot better. So that project is, we approved the conceptual design, which is the drawing that you'll see behind Dr. Miramontes. And we're in the process of completing those drawings and submitting those to DSA. And our goal is to have DSA approval by the end of April for that project, which will allow us to begin the work during the summer. And with that project, one of the constraints we need to make sure that we can hit is we need parking and we need drop off. So that has to be done during our 10-week summer break. So we're pushing to get that thing approved. And again, later on the agenda, there'll be approval to proceed with that project. That way, as soon as we receive the drawings from DSA approved by mid-end of April, we can rock and roll and get the contractor procured. The next project is the Pendleton site remodel. So that was submitted to DSA for the first plan check review process, and we received comments in mid-January for that. And right to the left of Dr. Miramontes is a rendering that the architect put together looking from the parking lot into where the new building would be for the admin. So basically to the right of that drawing would be where the MPR is located. As part of that project, we are doing the MPR modernization, the parking lot expansion, and the playground. So that whole site is encompassing one big project, which will include all the components of the projects I previously mentioned. So right now, the DSA approval is expected. Our original date that I have on here of April 15th is what we're tracking from the beginning of the project. We actually expect to receive that by mid-March. So we should be ahead of our initial plan on the DSA, or our initial schedule of DSA approval in mid-April. So as soon as that is approved, again, we will seek permission to bid to move forward on that project as well. That project does have a lot of logistics involved that we are starting the process of working on right now with bus drop-off and parent pickup for that, because that project cannot be done during the summer. Building a new building is more of a 8-9 month project rather than a 10-week project for the summer. So we have to logistically complete the parking lot during a window where there's no one on site. That way the drop-off for the parents and the parking of the staff can be in the new parking lot while we utilize the old parking lot for logistics of the construction, but we still have to allow access for buses. So there is going to be a logistical plan that we will work on as a team, and we'll bring the site involved with that and work with them to get all that completed. So the biggest constraint that we have for the Pendleton project to date is the delivery of the playground material, which right now, Miracle, the manufacturer of the equipment, is saying that we will receive that in early August. So currently with the material delays, that material will not be able to install the playground before school starts. We are working at pulling all strings possible to move that up, to get that material in time to be able to complete the install before the kids come back. But we are planning on doing that work the first part of the school year. Hopefully, fingers crossed, the manufacturer can deliver it earlier and we can get it installed in the summer. That project does have a complete budget of the $4.5 million, which include hard and soft costs for the new building as well. So the next slide, the second to last slide, I think we're off track on our.
Yeah.
We can go to one more future projects in the title. In addition to the bond projects, there are a lot of other construction projects going on throughout the district, which include the parking lot expansion at Beatty, which is currently in with DSA right now for approval for the access. And once that's completed, the contractor who's doing the athletic building will do that during the summer. We do have outdoor learning spaces at various sites, heating and air conditioning, maintenance and upgrades at various sites, a re-roofing project at Whitaker, various asphalt jobs throughout the district. We do have the solar, which is, it's kind of hard to see in front of the board members. We have sites, site plans of the locations where all the solar is going to be installed at every site. And underneath the solar, we're going to utilize as outdoor learning space and shaded areas for the students to use for either play or outdoor learning. The Whitaker Park project in conjunction with the city of Buena Park, various painting projects, and then maintenance projects throughout the district that we typically do in the summer. So there is a lot going on that's starting now and taking place during the summer. At pretty much every single site has construction taking place and upgrades going on. And we're excited about the amount of planning and the amount of work that went into getting ready and prep for the summer. So if anyone has any questions, be happy to answer those.
I just want to say it's actually nice to see renderings and blueprints instead of reading it on the Friday report because I can't visualize it on there. But it's nice to see the renderings and the blueprints. So there's a lot going on. I just do ask everybody to be patient with us. There's going to be a lot of pieces and places moving around. So just bear with us. But I mean, once all this is said and done and completed, I think it's going to look fantastic.
I do want to thank Mike Magnan, Mike Anderson for instrumental along with TeleQ and architects in getting these larger pieces there. And of course, thank Sandy Poteet to make sure that although I have these big dreams, you have these big dreams, we have to live within our means. She reminds me of that all the time, right? So she puts me back in my place about what we can do. But this is all money coming from what our facilities master plan came through. And I'm glad we could do it. Unfortunately, I'm glad we're doing it. Unfortunately, it's all one summer, right? So we do have a small window of an opportunity for summer school. That was one of the big things we talked about. Where can we host summer school? Because we're gonna have everything torn up. Summer school this year, what we're planning on right now, since we have, we had Emory Stafford, but it would be at Emory School. We're looking at summer school being held there because that's the only site that only has the NPR, where other sites have asphalt, painting, everything going on. And so that's the plan right now. But I do want to thank the team. These will actually go to the school sites so that their staff can see what's happening. And then hopefully we place them in the office so parents can see what's happening. And we'll make sure we get a little sticker on there saying paid for by on whatever, right? Or paid for by modernization dollars. And so we'll move forward with that. Any other questions for the team?
I just have one. So basically, if we do all of these projects, it's only going to be Pendleton that would probably come into the school year, besides, I mean, the playgrounds, correct? Everything else should be done during summer.
That's correct. I did want to point out a couple things. If you're looking at it here, you'll see a green shade here. This is the shade structure. So it's just top down. It's not solid green, but I just want to show, it shows the size of the shade structure in here. And then on the solar projects, we are dependent upon the solar company in their timelines, and they're dealing with DSA separate from us.
Oh.
So we have to wait sometimes on their issues. We were going back and forth. We're meeting
Once again, it's nice to see all this, and yeah, probably one place I want to avoid is Mrs. Potteet's office by going over budget, so let's keep it under control. But moving on, we're gonna move on to action calendar, acceptance of the 2021 Winter Park School District Audit Report. It is recommended that the governing board review and accept the Winter Park School District Audit Report. Dr. Miramontes.
Yeah, I'm going to turn it over to Sandy Potteet, our Chief Financial Officer, who will introduce Christy White, representatives, and go over the audit report. Mrs. Potteet?
So our audit is performed by Christy White, certified public accountants, and our representative this evening from that firm is Valerie Shaw to go over your audit report with you.
Hello, everyone. Hopefully you all remember me. It's great to see everyone. Unfortunately, I can't be there with you, but I'm glad I get to participate this way. As you know, I'm Valerie Shaw, auditor with Christy White, and I'm here to talk about your 2020-2021 financial audit. We give 3 audit opinions when we do your audit. The first is over financial statements, and we were able to give you an unmodified opinion, which is the best opinion that we can give. So that's a great thing. We had no audit findings over financial statements, so also great news. And we only had 1 audit adjustment, which wasn't a fault of the district. It was actually some erroneous guidance given by CDE, go figure. And it just had to do with the Extended Learning Opportunities Grant and kind of how you had to account for that. It didn't change the amount of money that you got, just what year you could report it in. So we had to adjust that. The next opinion that we gave was over federal compliance, also an unmodified opinion, so great job there. No findings, no question costs. We looked at your ESSER and year programs as well as CRF and special education, so great job there. And then finally, the last opinion that we gave was over state compliance. And again, an unmodified opinion, no audit findings and no question costs, so great job. The newest thing that impacted your audit report was a change in the accounting principles, and it impacted the way that your student body funds get reported in the audit report. So if you were looking at your 2019-2020 report and comparing it to 2020-2021, you'd see that the financials for the student bodies get reported a little differently now. They're no longer considered a fiduciary type fund, so they get rolled into the pot with the rest of your funds, but they are separated out so that it's clear that those are for students. Otherwise, it was a great audit. We really appreciate the help of the business office and really everybody that participates in the audit process. It's very challenging, as you all know, to do things remotely, but your team's fantastic and they were able to get us everything that we needed in a timely fashion so that we got our audit done, and again, without problems. So great job, everyone. If anybody has questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you.
Seeing no questions, I'm asking the board to recommend that the governing board accept Winter Park School District audit.
Do I have a motion?
Motion.
I'll
Thanks,
second.
Sean. Thank you, Ms. Ahmad. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, and I'm an aye. Motion passes 4-0.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Moving on to the 2022-2023 Winter Park School District Budget Development Calendar and Preliminary Budget Assumptions. It is recommended that the governing board consider and approve the 2022-2023 Budget Development Calendar and Preliminary Budget Assumptions as provided. Dr. Miramontes.
Yes, I'd like to turn over to Chief Financial Officer, and I want to thank her team. I'm sure she's going to name them, but for their work on the developmental budget she's going to present tonight. Potteet?
Thank you very much. Good evening, board members, superintendent, and audience members. We're going to review the 22-23 governor's budget proposal and how that'll impact their budget development for the next report. So our staff, Director of Fiscal Services, Neelam Kakar, attends with me to the presentation so that we can both be prepared and learn what we need to about the budget. So I thank her for her time and effort in helping with this. We look first at, next slide, please. We first look at the state budget and economy. That's going to drive what the state's going to provide for us in our budget. They have a robust year. They have a $45.7 billion surplus going into the 22-23 fiscal year. They have projected increases in personal income tax and sales and use tax. They are projecting to have significant reserves, including adding to the budget stabilization account or the rainy day fund, the public school system stabilization account, and their general operations reserve. So it's nice that they're able to build their reserves. There are things that we don't know, COVID-19 and what that's going to do to the economy and inflation. There's a little bit of concern as inflation has risen to rates above 1982s. So we are concerned and watching that. So if we go to the next slide, what happens with the Proposition 98, that's the education side of the budget. It's an all-time high. We have $16.1 billion and new revenue for K-14 education. And I say K-14 because the Prop 98 does include community colleges as well. So it's not just K-12, it includes community colleges in the Proposition 98 portion of the budget. There are strings in the new budget, however. We are going to be required to spend down our reserves. That's going to be the first thing that's going to happen based on the budget. So we'll talk about that today. And then our new funding, most of it is restricted. There's very little that's for ongoing operations. Everything is tied to something else, to a program or a service. So we have very little new money for increased costs for the inflation and ongoing increased costs that we have. The Prop 98, next slide, please. So of the education budget, the governor has been listening to the education community. So luckily, we have avoided any new initiatives that require another plan. So thanks, I'm sure, to Dr. Cantu and her team. We have no more new plans to write. I think we've written 4 or 5 this year that was tied to money that we received for this year. Next year, we don't anticipate having any new plans. However, and the governor he's building on those budgets programs that he initiated last year, which is good for us. And then the other thing that he's listened to is he's heard the concerns about enrollment, declining enrollment, and how that's an attendance for students. So he's actually put forth a proposal to provide some assistance to districts. And so we'll talk about that as well today. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, his core programs, they're going to receive a COLA, but they're not going to be, we already have increases in pensions that we're going to be dealing with as well. There's slight changes to the LCFF. That would be how the attendance is going to be computed. And there's a proposal for a special ed change on how their funding model works. But these are, again, remember, this is the January budget, so there's not a lot of detail yet at this point. There are one-time investments for kitchen facilities and transportation proposed for next year. The governor proposes to continue support and increase his support for the Expanded Learning Opportunities Program. And he's proposing to provide some funding towards the Universal TK program with the new staffing ratios that are required. There's also programs at the high school level for college and career. Next slide, please. So with the state budget, they have, of course, as I mentioned, a surplus. So they're putting 20.6 million of their surplus into discretionary. They're putting 16.1 billion into public education and 9 billion into reserves and debt reduction. So if we go to the next slide, that reserves and debt reduction, they are required at the state to make a deposit into the Proposition 98 rainy day fund. So they have met the 4 requirements at the state level that they are required to set money aside into the state Proposition 98 fund. So we're being funded at test 1. They've paid down the maintenance factor. There's funding available to pay for the ADA and COLA, and capital gains have exceeded 8%. So all 4 of these factors have been met. So if we go to the next slide, what happens when that is met, once there is a balance of 3% of the minimum guarantee for schools is in the Proposition 98 reserve, it triggers a cap on local school districts. So our reserve will be capped based on the fact that there's a sufficient reserve at the state. They've determined in their legislation that then we are not allowed to maintain a large reserve. So if we go to the next slide.
3%.
So as this says, when the state reaches their 3%, which they have this year, it caps district's reserve at 10%. And that's using the assigned and unassigned ending balance of the general and special reserve funds. We do not have special reserve funds that they are referring to. So this would apply to what we have in our unassigned and assigned ending fund balance. It does apply to us. We are not basic aid or smaller than 2,501 students. So we are subject to this beginning with the adoption of the 22-23 state budget. So we'll be looking at that. The only way you can avoid or save outside of this is if you commit funds. So if you commit your funds and for a specific purpose, even though it's in your ending fund balance, that commitment will allow you to pull those dollars aside and not be counted in your reserve cap. So as we finalize the budget development, we'll be looking at that process to determine a reserve if we need to commit any funds for future purposes.
For how many years can you commit?
There is no limit on how many years you can commit. You can commit by area, say type of project, cost, or what you want to, let's say, for example, you want to set aside money to buy textbooks. You can set that aside and commit it, and we still have time to identify the specific amount up until we get ready for budget adoption. So we have time to decide the amount. We can decide what we need to set aside as a commitment. And then once a commitment can only be set by the board, and a commitment can be removed by the board.
But then she was asking, can we set aside money for science camp?
You could.
We could.
I mean, could you do like 3 years? Ahead?
You could. I think we should talk about the impacts of how you would do that, because if it's in our current ongoing expenses, you wouldn't need to set it up as a commitment because it's part of your ongoing operations.
Yeah.
So this would be for things that you're wanting to build up for to make a one-time purchase is the type of thing you would be setting up a commitment for.
And I do want to commend the board, because I know it was your commitment when I first came on board with Rick Holash, that we were in the hole. We're in the hole, we were barely surviving, right? One time the county said, no more, right? So we went from that to reserve of about 11%, right, at the end of last year, right? Under Rick and taking over. And so now the state's saying, no more than 10% to meet that threshold, but we can't look at
Commitment.
assigning some of these dollars.
You have to look at a formal commitment of the dollars in order to, and that's a perfectly acceptable way to do it. It's not cheating or anything like that. It's a policy that's been in place for many years to be able to set aside commit funds. Most haven't really felt not a lot of districts did commitments because it was a choice, but as this comes into play, it makes it a more important option that we can look at. Okay, so if we go on to the next slide. So how that affects what we're looking at for our budget development for next year. So we look at our enrollment projections, we'll look at what it impacts to revenue and what our expenditure assumptions are. So remember, right now, we're not looking at actual numbers. We're looking at what the developmental components are, the facts, the things that we're going to use to build the budget with. So if you could go to the next slide. So our enrollment projections. So we have again done a cohort survival method to project 2022, 23, and 23, 24. We are continuing to decline. So these numbers are based on our CBEDS number, which is in October. So which for the current year, we were at 4,015. So when we drop our anticipated enrollment for 22, 23 is 3,930. So that's an 85 student drop. So that's our preliminary projection. For next year will be an 85 student drop. And the year after that, right now, we're projecting another 89 students. So that's the current projection of where we look at for enrollment. So enrollment, of course, then drives our ADA. So if you go to the next slide. So as we just saw, our ADA has been declining over the last few years. And the ADA drives right into the revenue. So our 1920 ADA, that was the year that we began the pandemic. And so the ADA was cut at what's called period 1 attendance, which had been reported just before the shutdown. And we were then in 2020, 2021, the state said, whatever you had in 1920 ADA will automatically be your 2020, 2021 ADA. So we were funded on that prior year for 2020, 2021. For 21, 22, which is the year we're in, your choice is you're funded on the greater of your current year or your prior year. Well, our prior year is 2020, 21, which is actually 2019, 20. So we've been carrying those ADA in the calculation for 3 years. In 22, 23, it'll be the greater of our actual 21, 22 this year or our 22, 23 for next year.
That's a great graphic, right?
It's a significant drop. We're actually, as we've been looking at the numbers and monitoring them, there's a possibility based on ADA absence rates that we may still actually be funded on actuals for 22, 23. Because with the high, if our attendance goes up, even though our enrollment is down, we think our ADA amount could be at a break even or greater with 22, 23. We'll be monitoring that as we go through the year. As of what's in law today. We go to the next slide, however, there's been a proposal by the governor. So he has made the first proposal of adding a component to our ADA calculation. So as I said, we have current year or prior year, the greater of. There's a new calculation being proposed, the computed average ADA, which is the prior 3 years ADA, not including the year you're in. So it would be 1920, 2021, and 21-22. Those 3 years averaged compared to your current year or the prior single year, and you would get the greater of the 3. This is what the governor has proposed. However, there has been other legislation proposed that from other legislators that it's through 3 prior years, including the year you're in. So it wouldn't go all the way back to 1920. It would only go to 2020, 21. We don't know which one's going to be approved. There's also legislation proposed for to give us funding for the variance between ADA and enrollment. So basically to give us full enrollment funding. So that has also been proposed, where you would have your ADA calculation just like you do now, but then you also have a calculation of total enrollment. And the gap between the two would become basically another grant. Unfortunately, you have to earmark those dollars and you have to spend at least 50% of those dollars on providing attendance related services. So for chronic absenteeism, there are lots of proposals out there for what is it going to look like. The only one method we have that we can count on at this point and what we'll use to develop the budget is current law, greater of current or prior. We'll be sticking with that until we get something else formalized, and then we'll move with whatever that is. But right now we'll stick with the current law as we build our budget.
Why isn't raising the ADA amount even an option? Why do we have to keep going back 3 years? Why can't they fill the gap by raising the amount of money you get for ADA?
Well, that's another option, is to provide us more money per ADA.
Yeah.
But they're looking at ways to allow you to use a greater number for that average daily attendance. So that's another option, is can you just provide more money for the ADA that we have in the current year? That would be helpful too. There has been proposals for that as well, to just increase the base, increase the base funding. So if we go to the next slide. So our revenue will be generated by the COLA of 5.33% that's currently estimated. It applies to the LCFF, special ed, child nutrition, child development, and the mandate block grant. So there's a few programs that are not funded. One in particular for us would be the ACES program does not receive a COLA for next year. So if we go to the next slide, for the LCFF, this is what the funding factors on a per ADA would be based on grade spans. Sort of right in the middle is your 22-23 adjusted base grant per ADA. So for K3 students, it would be $9,410 per ADA. 4 through 6 would be $8,653. And 7th through 8th would be $8,909. In addition to that, we receive supplemental and concentration funds that are for our unduplicated pupil count service students. And because we're over 55% of our students are above that, we receive a concentration grant in addition to supplemental. And the funding rates for those students are here as well. So we go to the next slide. Our other revenues that we'll be building into the budget, the lottery is projected at $163 per ADA for unrestricted, $65 per ADA for restricted. Mandate block grant is up to $34.54. Ongoing federal programs are Title I, II, III, and IV programs. We anticipate those at the same level at this point. We haven't heard that there's any changes expected. We could go to the next slide. The other component of our budget is then the expenditures, our personnel costs. So our staffing ratios are negotiated by contract. The only caveat to that is the new state mandated TK ratio of 12 adults to 1, 12 to 1 for TK. It's not 2 teachers, it's a teacher and a second adult in the classroom, but TK will be at a hard cap of 24 per the state because we have to meet that 12 to 1 student ratio. The other grades are kindergarten at 24 to 1, grades 1 through 3 at 26 to 1, grades 4 through 6 at 30 to 1, and grades 7 through 8 at 30 to 1. And of course, then our expenditure cost increases will also include off-step and column per the salary schedules as employees are anticipated to move as they're eligible. So we'll include that estimated cost as well. Next slide.
I just want to interject real quick is we have incredible class sizes in kindergarten. I feel very proud of that in a first grade and third grade teacher that our class sizes aren't as large as our neighboring districts. Sit at 32 and 33 and 32.
I want to just ask about the 12 to 1. Would it be another full-time person for TK?
It could be another TK aide. So you have an
full-time?
AM aide and a PM aide, maybe an overlap of lunch periods. So there's 2 people out there during lunchtime. Break down the class sizes of 2 to 1, 12 to 1 as well. So we're looking at
So for the whole school day, basically.
yeah. So correct.
Okay. So in addition to salary costs, the other component of personnel costs is your what's called statutory benefits for all employees. So whether they're in CalSTRS retirement or CalPERS retirement or Social Security, Medicare, unemployment, and workers' comp apply to all employees. So CalSTRS is increasing to 19.10% for next year. And in 23-24, the CalSTRS board will have the ability to raise that if they choose to. CalPERS is currently projected at 26.10 for 22-23. Wow. That could go up or down. I think it comes out around April. We'll have a final number for PERS. And of course, their out years can also be adjusted. That gets changed every year. So those are based on their actuarial studies. If you recall, the reason our rates are a little bit lower is that 2 years ago, as part of the budget development, the state put money into the retirement systems to reduce our rates. They are no longer doing that. That could have been an option for how the budget was being done this year with all those surpluses. It was not done. So they have not provided anything on our behalf to buy down the retirement costs. So districts are still required to pay the full cost of those. So if we could go to the next slide. So our next steps in budget development, external factors are, we'll wait for what's considered the May revise. So the governor will revise his proposal and send it out again in May. At that point, the governor and the legislature will work together. Legislature will develop their own budget based on his information and what they choose. And they'll bring forward a budget to the governor by June 15th for his approval by July 1st. And that's in statute that they have to do that. Now, last year was the first year that even though we had a July 1 budget, We didn't have details until several weeks after, as they were finalizing details, even though they'd adopted a budget. So I don't know if that'll be the same this year. We will be bringing forward, and that's what brings us to the internal side. We bring our budget for public inspection on June 9th. So we will have to take whatever data we know by at the May revise, finalize that budget, because it must go out for public inspection prior to the hearing on June 13th. And then we will bring it back for budget board adoption on June 27th. So the 2 meetings in June will have a hearing followed by an adoption, and those things cannot be at the same meeting. By law, they have to be at separate meetings, and they must also be in conjunction with your LCAP. So we'll not only be bringing back the budget at those times, but the LCAP at the same time. And that is, next slide. Are there any other questions?
I wanted to ask about the cap, not necessarily for the district. Is it the same for city levels? Do you happen to know for the reserve for the cap?
I believe it's only on education. It had to do with Proposition 2. I believe it's only on education that has this reserve. Very interesting.
You think at some point they're gonna get rid of that cap and let us be able to, or is it gonna be, it seems like it's pretty firm? as far as-
It's firm. It was part of Proposition 2 voted on by the people. So it's not going to change anytime soon. We're going to be living with this. They didn't honestly think they would get to it so quickly. They thought it was kind of a pie in the sky. Getting all 4 of those factors met at the state level was something they didn't expect to happen. And then the economy just turned, and all of a sudden, here we are. So it came into play much sooner than folks thought, and folks thought it might not ever come into play. But we're living with what we have, and we have mechanisms for being able to maintain a healthy reserve. We have those abilities, and we can do that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Poteet
Thank you.
and staff. So just asking the board to recommendation for the board to consider to approve the 22-23 budget development calendar preliminary budget assumptions as provided.
Motion.
I'll second.
Thanks, Simone. Thank you, Sean. All in favor?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. Motion passes 4-0. Approve the use of the Oxnard District piggyback bid RFP number 592, produce products for the purchase of fresh fruits and vegetables. It's recommended that the governing board approve the use of the Oxnard District RFP number 592, produce products to purchase fresh fruits and vegetables. Document on this.
Yeah, it says it as it is. We want to piggyback on Oxnard's school district's opportunities, and so I asked the board to approve that.
Motion.
A motion.
Thank you, Michelle.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Chong. All in favor?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. Motion passes 4-0. Approval to accept funds from Coates Foundation grant. It's recommended that the governing board approve to accept the additional funds from the Coates Foundation grant. Dr. Minamontes.
Yes, it's the first of 2 payments from the Coates Foundation. I want to thank Dr. Cantu, who works with the Coates Foundation and our school sites as well, site administrators, and the site mentors and fellows. And it's an opportunity, again, for us to continue to grow as teachers across the district. I asked the board to accept this grant.
Motion.
Motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chong.
Second.
Thank you, Michelle. All in favor?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. Motion passes 4-0. Acceptance of the 2022 St. Jude Hospital grant. Recommended that the governing board approve the acceptance of the 2022 St. Jude Hospital grant. Dr. Minamontes.
Yeah, I'd like to thank St. Jude Hospital, our partner Tracy Byers there, who has continued to support Winter Park School District. I want to thank Mrs. Centeno and Charlene Mall, the Wellness Tulsa. And I just asked the board to continue that partnership and accept this grant as well.
Again, a motion.
Motion.
Thank you, Mr. Strong. Thank you, Ms. Ahmad. All in favor?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. Motion passes 4-0. Permission to go bid Quarry Asphalt. It's recommended that the governing board approve to go bid for the Quarry Asphalt project, subject to provisions of the public contract code. Dr. Minamontes.
Yeah, the next 6 are all going out to bid opportunities for us. The first one here being Corey Asphalt. we get things rolling, as Mr. Spencer had mentioned, the faster we get this out on the market, the faster we can go out and look for contractors to help work with us.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Michelle. All in favor?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. Motion passes 4-0. Permission to go bid the Whitaker roofing. It's recommended the governing board approve to go bid for the Whitaker roofing project, subject to provisions of the public contract code.
Motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. Motion passes 4-0. Permission to go bid for the asphalt concrete for outdoor learning space, Beatty Middle School, Buena Park Middle School, and Gilbert Elementary School. It's recommended that the board approve to go bid for the asphalt concrete for the outdoor learning space at Beatty Middle School, Buena Park Middle School, and Gilbert Elementary School, subject to provision of the contract code. Dr. Miramontes.
Again, this is one of these bid opportunities for us to go out to seek contractors and have them perform the work we're asking them to do. So work we're asking them to do.
I'll motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chong.
I'll second.
Michelle, Michelle. Thank you, Michelle. All in favor?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. Motion passes 4-0. Permission to go bid for the NPR modernization project at Corey, Emory, Gilbert, and Whitaker Elementary Schools. It's recommended that the governing board give permission to go bid on the NPR modernization projects at Corey, Emory, Gilbert, and Whitaker Elementary Schools, subject to provisions of the public contract code. Dr. Miramontes.
Same thing, we're asking the board to approve this so we can go off the bid.
Are we trying to get the same company for all four?
Well, it depends. I mean, if a company can do them all, that's great. I don't know if we've got the
So they won't be
specialty
done
out there.
separately.
We will try and coordinate them.
One project. for
One
all
project for
four.
all. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you meant all the, like the Whitaker. So for the NPR,
For
one
all of them,
project.
one project.
I'll
Thank you.
motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chong. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Ahmad. All in favor?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. Motion passes 4-0. Permission to go bid for Pendleton Elementary School new administration building, NPR modernization, new parking lot, and new playground projects. It's recommended that the governing board give permission to go bid on the Pendleton Elementary School new administration building, NPR modernization, new parking lot, and new playground project.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second. Oh, you can do it.
Thanks,
Michelle can
Sean.
do it.
Thank you, Shed. All in favor?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. Motion passes 4-0. Permission to go bid on the Whitaker Elementary School curb appeal. It's recommended the governing board give permission to bid on the Whitaker curb appeal, subject to provisions of the public contract code. Dr.
Aye.
Miramontes.
Yes, and again, one of these opportunities for us to go out to bid early and seek contractors that can complete the work they were asking them to do.
I'll motion.
Thanks, Sean.
I'll second.
Thank you, Ms. Ahmad. All in favor?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. Motion passes 4-0. Approval to purchase technology supplies, equipment, software, and services from CDW Government LLC via the piggyback clause of the Irvine Unified School District bid number 1920-01 IT Technology Equipment and Peripherals Agreement Extension. It's recommended that the governing board give permission to purchase technology supplies, equipment, software, and services from CDW Government LLC via the piggyback clause for Irvine Unified School District Agreement for bid number 19-20-01 IT. Dr. Miramontes.
Yes, so we currently have piggyback will bid with them. This is an extension through Irvine, and we're asking the board to update this as well. So we can go out and continue our work with CDW and purchase.
And a motion.
A motion.
Thank you, Michelle. And a second.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Chong. All in favor?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. Motion passes 4-0. Approval of job description, Director of Special Assignment. It's recommended that the governing board approve the job description, Director on Special Assignment. Dr. Miramontes.
Yes, as you're aware, we've had discussions about the need to support the Division of Special Education. And I'm asking the board to, typically we do some two different meetings, one for discussion and one for consent, but I'm asking the board to take action on this tonight so that we can continue to work on the SIPC fund that under Dr. Can too is working through the special education action plan for systemic improvements. Part of that would be the need for a director of special assignment to work with Mrs. Cantu and the division for the department to continue our efforts to improve our services to our families and our staff members.
Make the motion.
Ms. Amar, yes, second.
Second.
Thank you, Michelle. All in favor?
Aye.
With that being said, I am going to, now that it's approved, I am going to make that recommendation, and I'm going to ask the board to ratify the next board meeting to have Julie Linicky step into that role as the Director of Special Assignment in the Division of Special Education, and also here as Mrs. Clark, and we'll bring them back for an official one, pending board approval at our next board meeting. But Mrs. Clark is the interim principal at Emory School. So just want to make that very clear up front and transparent. Thank you both for being here
Thank
tonight.
you.
Thank you. So motion passed 4-0. Before we proceed, though, I do want to thank Mrs. Mock for all her time and commitment in the special education department. So thank you very much for everything that you have done. Gladly appreciate it. Moving on to discussion calendar. Governing board meeting dates. Dr. Miramontes.
Yes, this was brought up by board member Shed. She thought we could look at the possibility of going to one. It's not the first time it's come forward as well. It's brought forward a couple of years ago. So do we have the two slides? Nope. Okay, so you've received the options A and B. So in the Friday report, we sent you the options A and B. Should we move forward with one meeting a month? And I'll just turn it right back over to the board for their discussion.
I know it's brought up for discussion. Michelle, would you like to lead us on this?
Yes, I have been looking at, well, what we've been handling for the last 3 years. You know, we're all new to this, and we've had quite a few challenges and that we've been through and had to make decisions on. And I think things are getting to a place where we are more competent in what we're doing and more in tune with working with the community and our superintendent. And I think that we are able to handle things with 1 month meetings, keeping in mind that sometimes we will be needing a second meeting during the month if need be. And so that's what I wanted to, that's what I'm bringing up to the board to consider.
Ms. Mott.
I appreciate board membership bringing that up. I do want to say that I prefer the 2 meetings a month, and I just wanted to list a few things why I prefer the 2 meetings a month. I feel like if we do meetings are going to run longer if we do them once a month. I know that in other surrounding districts, I noticed that their meetings do run a lot longer than ours. And the only way we wouldn't run longer is to decrease the amount of reports and presentations that we're doing, which I also don't want us to do. I feel like 2 meetings a month isn't a lot. You know, our constituents would appreciate, you know, we're dedicating basically just 2 days of our month to do it. I'd also rather have 2 set dates rather than having 1 date set aside for special meetings, because that also doesn't allow for future planning, which I like to do a lot of. And if you have that date set aside, you kind of know, you know, you're just not doing anything on that day and you have it set aside for a regular board meeting. And I also prefer the 2 times a month because I feel like we're more in touch with the happenings around the district and the staff. And I feel like we already have, we have December and July and sometimes November where we're already once a month. So it's not like we're doing twice a month the whole year. And my last reason is kind of personal. I feel like I miss out already on my kids, you know, dinner time with my family on these board meeting days. And if it goes on later on, I'd probably be missing also the bedtime routine. I have younger children, so I would prefer the 2 shorter meetings as opposed to 1 longer one. For me, that's for me.
I could see both. I personally would prefer 1. But actually, to Ms. Ahmad's point, I don't get a chance to go out to sites sometimes. And so if I were able to take 1, it makes it a little bit sometimes easier, but these are all personal things. I like the one only in terms of I'd rather do a one longer one together and get through things than split it up and then be able to have options of meeting whenever we want to, or not want to, that sounds bad. Like, not that we're prima donnas or anything, but we could meet officially. And then secondly, when we have issues and topics that we can discuss through special meetings. So ultimately, sometimes we may still have 2 a month anyways, in my opinion. But it gives, I feel like it'll give us a little more flexibility with once a month. So, I mean, that's just my personal opinion though.
I think that's for me. I see everybody's point of view. There is some personal, there is some business. I happen to lose out a lot too by doing 2 meetings a month. There's sometimes I don't even see my daughters till the weekend. So going to 1 meeting a month makes it easier for me. It's, but I see Mrs. Ahmad's point as far as having more meeting time and being more in touch. But it also led to be in touch more with our school site by freeing up that 1 extra day once a month to go into the sites. And also it gives us time to go do things on the weekends to see those events, because sometimes it's nice to see the events during the week, but we also have events that happen in our district on the weekend. So it frees up that time for us to partake in that. But I do see everybody's point of view, and I can see where it's, it can be discussed. But as mentioned, I prefer once a month. It makes it easier. Also, to it's a commitment that I made to the board that I want to be at all meetings, and sometimes there's possibilities that I cannot make it, and that's another reason why I won't prefer once a month.
So if I'm hearing everybody correctly, so just what we've adopted thus far. We have the month of February with 2 months because we've got school reports. We've got the month of March with 1 for sure. And we have a scheduled meeting that is already on the books for the 2nd meeting of the month. That's with Angelina Price, Pride from CSBA that will go over the handbook. That's a special meeting, right? First one is business, second one is Angelina Pride. The one in April is, we have 1 meeting that month, but we also, well, we don't have one scheduled for that one. We have 2 teachers being honored for Teacher of the Year on April 25th. That's a Monday. We have a finalist and a state finalist, and I think it behooves us to have representation there for that Monday meeting, Monday evening dinner meeting at Instructional with all the other county. We also have 1 meeting scheduled in May with a 2nd meeting there, but nothing on the agenda. In June, we do have 2 meetings because we've got the budget and the LCAP presentation and then the approval at the 2nd one. In August and July, we have 1 board's tour of schools. We talked about that a little bit. And then in August, we had 1 pencil. Well, we have 2. We've got 2 every month, but we just don't have agenda items on the 2nd one. We try to condense and provide a little bit more without losing any of our reports, because it's important for you to hear what's happening.
Yeah.
So I know that piece is that is important. But we are in a different place than when we first started off. I love that what you mentioned, beginning when we first all started together, that was there. So I did provide the board and what I'm hearing, not that it's a vote now, because we're up for discussion, but if I'm hearing the board correctly, they would like you to move forward with 1 a month. My question is, we have some dates that are already set aside when we're going to have 2. And I provided that to you with an option A and an option B, right? The option A included 1 a month with the exception of those couple of months that we talked about where we already had 2 scheduled. And the month of July with the board tour. But I also heard 2 board members in my conversations that might be out during the month of July. So we talked about on the option B one, that one has the board meeting, 2 board meetings, not in July. And should we need a special board meeting, we could have a special board meeting in July, but 2 board meetings in August, one being April 8th, that we could actually go out and see all the projects being completed, right? Because 99% of them were completed at that time. It could be a morning one, quickly get out and visit the school sites to finish them off, connect with the sectors, that'll be the health clerks, everybody just kick off the school year. And then the second one we would move forward with that second meeting and then one thereafter until December, until the new president comes on board and may make a recommendation to go to 2 board meetings a month.
I have a question. So to Ms. Ahmad's question points, could you put on special meeting approval consent items from like if, like, talk about planning, if cabinet or departments need stuff to be approved, can they be put on the special meeting agendas?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Presentations, you mean?
No, like, so in planning, I think a lot of times there's differentiation of presentations for us to know. And then there's planning ones where we'd have discussions through either a closed session here or whatever it may be. So a lot of times also as business housekeeping stuff, right? Like what if somebody needs emergency stuff to be approved? As long as we have opportunity to do that in our special meetings, because special meetings also have planning
Yes.
discussions if, so like going to your point, if there's times and we want to have discussion to plan a little bit, let's just say when it's a down month, like July or June, or not June, there's 2 in June above, like, I don't know, whatever months that's a single one.
October or November.
October, November, that there's still opportunity to do that, as well as still having our meetings be in a reasonable time where, again, no, I wouldn't want any reports to be missed, like a school should not be left out, obviously.
Well, and to be honest with you,
yeah.
we've had discussions in cabinet about most school districts will do a rotating, where every other year the board hears school reports. They do it on a rotating basis because it's the same report. There's not a whole lot that changes between year to year. I still think it's important that our board members hear from our principals and that our students get recognized. That really is the key for me, is our parents and students being recognized and seeing the great work there. So what we can do, as Mrs. Lamont said, she's already scheduled out her 2 days a month. Perhaps the board, if we do 1 meeting a month, the board can hold that second Monday of the month on your calendar as a possible special meeting. We won't have one unless we need to call one. So that you don't commit to the Dodger game or the Laker game or whatever else you might.
You're still
comes up.
missing out on things that you could have done on that day.
Right.
For me, I just like having them set. But another thing is our closed sessions, we're sometimes here till like 8:30, having a longer meeting and going into closed session. I really don't want to be here till 10:30. Miss out everything, for that day. At least I'm able to get home in time for something.
I totally agree. I just feel sometimes that when we do have a long one, it's probably because it's a special case or something that is really big that comes up. I don't feel like they come up every month though.
No,
or
it's not
twice a
every month,
Yeah,
but if it's once a month,
Right.
there's more of a chance of that
right.
taking longer.
I was thinking about that too. I'm thinking about how we get our Friday reports every week, which updates us on what's going on throughout the district. And then we also have our one-on-one with our superintendent every Friday, which again updates us on what's going on. And so I think it helps us to be more informed before we go into a after session meeting and not have as many questions or considerations to look at.
So there are a couple of options here. One is I could ask, I could work with President Fructus about which of the two. You bring up a great point with the closed session. Oftentimes, we actually have closed session before when it is a student discipline piece.
Mhm.
We could also do the same thing for our regular board agenda. Should we have a disciplinary case of an employee or a hot item that we have to bring up that relates to what the Brown Act allows us to do in closed session, we might be able to meet prior to, as we have with student discipline cases here and there. So is there any direction from the board? I mean, I've got, people asking to go 1 meeting a month. I haven't spoken to Mrs. Castaneda. Well, I've spoken to her last week about the possibility of this. She didn't weigh in either or, but she has in the Friday report. We just, as I meet with all of you, give you the updates. You receive them in the Friday report, and then we bring it for discussion, and then we move forward with consent. So if I'm hearing you, you would like me to move forward with this consent, and then we could vote it up or down.
I still like the opportunity to go to 1 meeting a month. I know this is not an meeting, but I just want to clearly state out. I've been trying to adapt to my commitment to the district, and I'd just like to say, I left my job of 17 years to adjust to the commitment of me being on the board And that's just, and my family time, because I do value family time. So me changing jobs and adapting to something completely new, I did that also for my family, and also for me to continue to serve on this board, because I see us doing a lot of great things, and going to one meeting a month with all the information that we get through the Friday reports. It's well out there. We are well educated as far as what's going on a daily basis. But if we just keep the second meeting available for any other special meetings like Mr. Chong mentioned, I'd like to go do that as well.
I've already said that I really prefer the one meeting a month, but I did want to add that I like the idea of doing the school tour in August as opposed to July, because we get to see more work that'll be completed. So that's my preference on that.
So it's option B. So what we can do is I can bring option B forward, and then the board can have an action item. And as a board, you guys can decide how you want to move forward. Is that the recommendation I'm hearing?
The discussion, I would say yes.
I'm a no either way. So I don't care.
So, yeah, we're not voting here tonight,
No.
but what I'm saying is I think it's a
We can
good
bring a calendar
discussion.
forward for the next
And if it
meeting.
doesn't work, I trust you as board members. If it doesn't work, we can always adjust. Should the board approve this, we can always adjust. You are super flexible. I know that because Aaron's getting you on the Zoom calls with me every week. Now that we've got a set schedule, I would agree with you. I think that's just an easier place where we can talk about things that are happening, your concerns that you may have, and just plans that we're moving forward with. I can update you on a weekly basis. So
You can bring the plan forward, calendar forward on the next meeting, and we can decide after another couple of weeks, think,
Yeah.
and then we can vote on it. Whether it could be voted down or it could be kept alone or whatnot, right? So,
and we can always adjust, as I mentioned before.
And to Dr. Minamonte's point, I mean, I think we're a well-versed board that we can adapt and have healthy discussions as far as any changes or implementations that we want to move forward as we go along. So
And that may be something that you guys, again, as we work on our handbook, right? You've got somebody from CSBA that you can lean on, that you can say, tell me how other districts do it once a month. Tell me how other districts do it twice a month. What are the best ways for us to be? I mean, again, we're all new at this, right? I think Irene's got a year longer than Tharwa, who has months longer than me, right? Who, you know, so we're all very new at this, right? We've got a great team. I've always said, you know, got an incredible board. And so if this is something that we want to move forward with, we've got an expert coming in March, we can ask her. You know, we can move forward with this one way or the other, but ask her, you know, as one of the things in the handbook, you can say, tell us about board meetings. How should they function? How should they go? You know, we can send her our board agendas and give us some feedback on these things, right? We use CSBA's format, so I'm sure she's going to say they look good. But again, I really want the content to be rich of what we provide you and what we provide the community, right? Sometimes we are out of here rather quickly and it's nice. Other times we are here a little bit longer and it's still nice, right? It's just one of those things that I'm hearing from board members about their opportunities to be out in the community should they not have a second night. But I'll leave it at that. So then I will bring forward one of the, well, it sounds like option B, the one with the meeting in August. Okay, thank you.
thank you, Dr. Minamonte. Thank you, board, for this healthy discussion. It was good to hear everybody's thoughts and opinions in regards to that discussion. We'll be moving on to board policy adoption review, revision, and deletions. Dr. Minamonte.
Now I turn it over to Mr. Harrison, our Chief Personnel Officer, and Dr. Cantu, who both have some opportunities to update us on board policies. Mr. Harrison?
Thank you very much. Good evening, President Frutos and members of the governing board. Our first board policy that we're taking a look at is the uniform complaint procedures. This one has continued to come back a few times, just even in the past year. Some of these revisions are as simple as revising the gender neutral terms within these provisions. In addition, there's new legislation related to Title IX and the process by which a compliance and investigation officer would go about doing the reporting. The report, the revisions are not significant in nature, but they do include specific language and changes in the education code and some of the laws and provisions therein that needed to be updated to align with CSBA recommendations. Are there any questions about this particular board policy?
Again, the next set of board policies have also been revised with the language that has been recommended. For our board policy about administering medication and monitoring health condition, it reminds the community that they should be notified at the beginning of the school year of the district's responsibility to administer medication to students on campus. It also stresses the parent's responsibility to have appropriate notification from a physician about the administering of medication on campus. The next board policy of infectious diseases reminds us that now that we are all aware of the importance of health and safety, that we cannot exclude students for any reason unless it is a lawful one that has been identified by the law so that students have ample access to instruction. It also reminds us that we must encourage all parents to follow the health and safety guidelines as the board policy administers. Again, in the final one with immunization, it gives us the responsibility to encourage and facilitate immunization of all district students. And again, to remind parents that they must provide documentation of their immunization when they are first enrolling in 7th grade, or if they are transferring into our school district, they must provide immunization records. Any questions to those 3 policies?
Thank you. Moving on to job description, Tulsa instructional coach, Dr. Montasser.
Yeah, I'm excited about talking about teaching and learning and how to improve our practices. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Cantu. We'll talk about the job description.
Yes, this job description is a companion to our grant that we have on ensuring that we have instructional support, our effective educators grant, which we presented, which we would be aligning with our coaching and mentoring. That's very similar to our COATSN program that we have. We find that with our coaching and mentoring, there is one that is really dedicated and intentional for professional learning for the areas that have been identified most beneficial to our students around content, transferable strategies across all content areas, supporting with data conversations, as well as PLCs at the grade level, and then also being able to transfer all of our initiatives onto a campus in a way that is easily implemented at each school site. Our instructional coaches, as we are moving this job description forward, would be of great support, not only with individual teachers, but grade level teachers with a focus on student learning. Are there any questions? Thank you.
Job description, coordinator, special education, Dr. Montasser.
Yes, you received a lay-in job description that I provided to you. It's also posted on the website and the agenda. Mr. Harrison.
Thank you. As you will notice highlighted in yellow, the primary adjustments here on this job description are focused on job title and credential preferences. The job title change will bring this position into better alignment with the official name of the Department of Special Education. With respect to the credential preferences, the new description highlights the valuable aspect of supporting our school psychologists with a underlying credential of school psychology being a preferred credential for our candidates. This would be an important aspect of the job. In addition, there's a conversation about the fact that our school psychologists, the coordinator position, as compared to some of our neighboring districts, is not quite as competitive in nature. And so there is a possible conversation with regards to an additional step for this particular position. Are there any further questions regarding these proposed revisions?
So basically adding a step 5.
it would be a step 6. We would eliminate step 1 and add a step 6 to this.
Oh, okay.
So it would remain a five-step process, but it would be taking the same percentage difference between each of the steps and readjusting to modify
So
that.
the
Basically, a
starting fee schedule?
reclassification of an administrative salary
Well,
schedule.
So the question was would the starting point be step 2? Depends. If you've got a psychologist or a teacher that's in special education, before you say it's the K-8 teacher, if you're teaching, or if you're supporting special education teachers and staff members, you should have some experience in special education, right? So, so it depends, because what typically happens, and Russell, you can probably allude to this a little bit more, but if you, let's just say, for example, you've been teaching for 20 years, right? And you're already making $105,000 or $99,000, whatever it may be. Russell and HR work with fiscal services office and look at a percentage of what that increase would be. Russ, do you want to allude to that a little bit more?
Sure. So typically, when you're moving between different steps on any salary schedule, depends from district to district, but it's going to be anywhere between typically a 4% increase from one step to the next, up to a 5% increase between the different steps. So those are typically evenly broken there. And again, in the preference here of looking for an individual who may have an underlying credential for PPS in school psychology. In most districts, I shouldn't say most, but in many districts, our school psychologists are considered part of the administrative team. They typically work a longer calendar and they typically make more on a per diem rate. And so in order to, I guess, develop a stronger candidate pool, we did feel that this was important to offer this opportunity to do a reclassification on the salary schedule for this particular position.
So Yvette and I did speak with Dr. G. Martin, other surrounding districts, about the successes of or some of our opportunities to really strengthen our special department. And that was one of the big things. If you had somebody that has special education experience, specifically a school psych, was looking at this. We're not looking at a school psych that's got 2 or 3 years. We're looking at one that's a seasoned veteran that is willing to come on, that's working towards their next level, next step. That's a real opportunity for them to come join us and be a part of that. So those are the adjustments. We'll bring it back for consent, but I just want to make it transparent that we are looking at adding that, dropping that first step and adding a 5th step that's equivalent to the amount. Any questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We'll be moving on to consent calendar unless the trustee has a question concerning a particular item and asks that it be withdrawn from the consent calendar. The items are approved at one time by the governing board. Mr. Charles?
I have nothing.
I have nothing. Motion?
A motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chong.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Shedd. All in favor?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. Motion passes 4-0. Information correspondence, major topics, 2021, 2022, Dr. Montasser.
Yeah, we've got the February 28th board meeting with Carl Gilbert School Report, the Every Student Succeeds Award recognition, and the LCAP supplement. The March 14th, we'll have Mabel Pendleton School, the second interim. So Mrs. Poteet, you're not off the hook. You're here next month as well. And then again, an update from Mike and Facilities. Hopefully we have some good news about our playground equipment and our solar projects at the beginning of March.
Thank you. Moving on to closed session, conference with Dr. Ramon Miramontes, Superintendent of the Buena Park School District, Labor Relations, Buena Park Teacher Association Government Conference Code number 54957.6, Labor Relations, California School Board Employee Association, chapter number 569, Government Conference Code 54957.6, Labor Relations, Non-Representative Management and Confidential Contract Employees, Government Code number 54957.6, and Public Employee Discipline Dismissal Release. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Frutos, I have nothing for closed session with city board members. That's something I'd like to bring forward.
Do I have a motion? To
Are we motioning for convening then?
No, it would be a reporting of just an adjournment, right?
Should be on the agenda.
So there's anything you want to discuss, we can go into open session now.
We can go into that.
Technically, it should have been.
Let's go ahead and then just complete the motion and then we'll reconvene after
Sure.
we gather ourselves here.
A motion to go with closed session.
In a second. Thank you, Michelle. All in favor?
Aye.
And I'm not, motion passes 4-0. Governing board meeting is called to session at 7:02.
Okay.
Are you gonna need the charger?
No, go ahead. I got, you have enough to complete the.
Yeah, I think we, well, let's just leave it until we come. No, remind me just on the way out.
We don't have yours. So nice. Really excited about the- Vanity drives the website. You can't go on your phone. We're just one way road.
Yeah, no, I get that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? Okay.
No, man.
Sorry, I had to run.
You don't want to put me
Okay, a motion to reconvene.
I'll second.
Thank you, Ms. Shedd. Thank you, Ms. Ahmad. We'll reconvene tonight back at here at 7:38. Reporting at a closed session, let the record reflect that there's no action was taken in closed session. Can I get a motion for adjournment?
Motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chong. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Ms. Ahmad. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And I'm an aye. Motion passes 4-0 at 7:39.
Good job, everyone.